blessed the transfer of several universities and also as a member of UNESCO International Commission on Education for the 21st Century. May I now request you, sir, to please deliver the inaugural address.
Narayana Priyamanangamadhapaharam Varanasi Purupatim Bhaja Vishwanatham Ragadi Dosharahitam Sajunanuragam Vairagya Shanti Nilayam Girija Sahayam Madhurya Devi Subhagam Garalabhiramam Varanasi Purupatim Bhaja Vishwanatham. Vice Chancellor, distinguished personalities on the dais, some of whom have regaled us with very thought-provoking and important speeches, office bearers of the BHU, the faculty, president and office bearers of the Mahamana Malviya Mission, representatives of the press and electronic media, and students of the university, welcome to Swatantrata Bhavan, which is in some ways the heart of the Banaras Hindu University. I'd like to greet all of you in my capacity as Chancellor, the BHU alumni who have gathered here from all around the world. It's a very impressive gathering. I have addressed many meetings in this hall, but I think today's meeting probably is the most well-attended and the most significant meeting because it brings together not only existing students but people who have made a name for themselves around the world in highly competitive situations. Wherever I go in the world, I find people come up to me and say, "Hey, I was in the Banaras Hindu University." And therefore I would like to congratulate all of you and to congratulate the university for having produced men and women, more men than women it seems. The gender imbalance needs to be addressed, I think, next time. But to have produced great scholars and people in many walks of life. And it is really an extraordinary day today. It's a birth anniversary of Mahamana Madan Mohan Malviya, and it is also the birth anniversary of Jesus Christ. It is Christmas. So we have a dual congratulations and a duly auspicious day. I have been associated with this university now for many, many years. My first association was in 1961. I was a young man at the time. I was here for 3 years as Pro-Chancellor. I presided over the convocations. Then for 3 years as Chancellor, I presided over the convocations. Then there was a break of 40 years. And how extraordinary it is that 40 years later I am now back again as Chancellor. There does seem to be some psychic and spiritual link. मुझे लगता है ये शंकर भगवान की नगरी है, मैं हिमालय पुत्र हूँ। आपको बता दूं कि भगवान शंकर यहाँ तो बाद में आए थे, वो मूल निवासी तो हमारे हिमालय के हैं। तो वाराणसी वालों को इसका घमंड नहीं होना चाहिए। So I really find myself, I'm very happy to be back and to see that the university has entered a new phase in its expansion. Every time I come, new buildings are inaugurated, new plans are suggested. We have developed at Barkaksha a whole, virtually a rural university. This is an urban university, that will be a rural university because it will cater to a different kind of requirement in our society. And all sorts of interesting plans are afoot, basically projecting the tremendous vision of Malviya. I am astounded every time I come here, I see new buildings. We never need any more land. Those buildings have come up in our own campus almost 100 years ago. He must have started thinking about this university way back in 1909, 1910. So 1 century ago, you have a man with such a broad and sweeping vision of what sort of campus he needed and also what sort of education was to be provided in that campus. A combination of science and technology, of the Paravidya and the Aparavidya, of science and spirituality. He realized at that time that unless we look at education in a holistic manner, we will not be able to achieve our goal. And that is why BHU is rightly considered to be Sarva Vidya ki Rajdhani. For your theme today, you've chosen the theme Higher Education, Global Perspectives and Indian Vision. And I have chosen to refer to the UNESCO International Commission on Education for the 21st Century, of which I happen to be a member. I was the only Indian member. And the report itself is significant. It is called Learning the Treasure Within. I think that itself is a very Indian concept, that ultimately the Vidya lies within us. Ishvara sarva bhutanam deshe tishtati. The Lord resides in the heart of all beings. And so however much we may look outwards, we have to also develop the fact that it is ultimately an inner process. And the fact that an international body should have realized that the treasure lies within us, I think is significant, particularly in an age of materialism and hyper-consumerism and ultra-promiscuity. So it was a very significant report, and we identified 4 pillars of learning that I mentioned in your background note also, and I will briefly today explore with you these 4 dimensions. First of all, let me say that we have marvelous definitions of education in our culture. Ya vidya sa vimuktai. Knowledge is that which liberates. It liberates us from ignorance, from narrow-mindedness, from fanaticism, from violence and hatred. That's what knowledge should really do. It should be a liberating process, not a constricting process. Sometimes education around the world is used as a methodology to restrict and distort the consciousness of students. But that is not the Indian tradition. The Indian tradition is Ya Vidya Sa Vimuktai. And our wide-ranging report covered a wide spectrum. The 4 pillars of learning that we identified. The first is learning to know. The Jnana Yoga. Aro Bhadrakrito Yantu Vishwatah. India has been a great source of learning. India has been a creator of learning. And India has also been the recipient of many streams of learning from around the world. India has been on the crossroads of civilization. If you look at the history of India, we've had so many inputs, but we have created and we've sent our learning around the world. I went to Angkor Wat last year, the greatest place of worship in the world, in a small state of Cambodia. How 1,000 years ago, artisans from India went and created that magnificent complex based on the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and then later on it became a Buddhist monument. And all our cultural conquests in South and Southeast Asia were never through the force of arms, as in the West, but were always through the force and the power of our inner thoughts, of our craftsmen, of our genius for creativity. So, learning to know Ano Bhadrakrito Yantu Vishwata, the Jnana Yoga, knowledge is doubling every 5 years. There is an explosion of knowledge. Now, from this tsunami of knowledge, you've got to extract tsunami of information rather. We have got to extract knowledge, and from knowledge we've got to, as it were, distill wisdom. That is the process that there is. Because otherwise there is so much information coming in now that we are in danger of being swept away. Our problem is not too little information, it is too much information. And therefore the discriminative mind, Sat Asat Viveka, which is at the basis of the Jnana Yoga, that is something which we need to learn. And it's very important, and it means that we should ask questions. Learning to know means that we should ask questions. Please remember, ours is a dialogic civilization. It's not a revealed civilization. The dialogue, the Upanishads, for example, the most important and the most significant of our scriptures are questions and answers. The Gita is question and answer. In the revealed religions, you can't ask questions because the revelation has been made and there it is. Take it or leave it. But in the dialogic civilization, there's constant questioning. And that, I think, gives us a great edge in the present world. Because we can continue to ask questions. We can continue to challenge rigid orthodoxies. And we can continue thereby to create new concepts and new paradigms. So this, I think, is tremendously important, because what I learned at school perhaps is all out of date. The chemistry, the physics, the geography, the history is all out of date now. But I have absorbed the capacity to learn. That is what is important. So when you say learning to know, it is not only learning the curriculum of your particular course, it is learning throughout your life to grow. I find every day I am learning something new. And that learning something new keeps one active and alert. There is a marvelous phrase. People don't grow old. When they stop growing, they become old. So age has got nothing to do with chronology. I've known young people who are old in their thoughts, and I've known old people who are young and vibrant in their thoughts. And therefore I think it's tremendously, particularly for the alumni. Don't think कि भाई अब हम बूढ़े हो गए हैं, अब क्या करेंगे बैठ के, अभी तो आपका दिमाग चलने वाला है ज़रा. Now you're going to be able to have time to think. Even the Vanaprastha stage was not a stage of negativity. It was a stage to give an opportunity for people to apply their minds to the deeper problems of thought, the deeper problems facing humanity. Therefore, learning to know involves a concept of lifelong learning and involves the concept of dialoguing, asking questions and remaining alert. That is the first pillar of knowledge. Obviously, pillar of learning. If you don't know, you can't learn. The second pillar, and that's very important because we have a lot of technologists here and a lot of scientists. The second pillar is learning to do. You know a great deal, but if you just sit around doing nothing, that knowledge does not have any impact upon society. It might give you a certain satisfaction that you know a lot, but unless that knowledge is translated into some positive action for Bahujana Sukhaya, Bahujana Hitaya, for the welfare of society, for the welfare of humanity, the knowledge itself remains sterile. And that is why it's very important that we must link knowledge, the capacity to know, with the capacity to do. And I have always felt that our ITIs are top class, they are world class, no doubt, our IITs. But where are the ITIs? Where are the institutes which will train the intermediate group of millions and millions of young men and women who may not be able to go through to college, but who have to learn something worthwhile? Our +2 formula has failed, as you know, miserably. The idea was that we'd have humanities stream and then social sciences and science and all, wo to chala nahi. So +2 now is the norm. After that, where do they go? the heedless sort of drift into colleges and universities, I think, is a waste of talent. Because many people now, even if they're not interested in that particular academic thing, they just drift into college. What is needed is a whole host of intermediate institutions which would teach people trades of all kinds. India is a burgeoning economy now. All sorts of opportunities are opening up. And today we can put a satellite into outer space, but we cannot get anybody to repair our television set. So it's a very strange situation. And Gardner, in one of his books, has a marvelous phrase. He says, a society that looks down upon plumbing because it considers it to be a lowly profession, and looks up to philosophy because it considers it to be a noble profession, will get the worst of both worlds. Neither its pipes nor its theories will hold water. So the thing is not what you do. You have to do it with a certain sense of excellence. And my submission to you are very distinguished educationists here. This intermediate level between school and the alternative is something, I think, towards which we should pay our attention. And now there has been a 5-fold increase. We have increased the outlay for education in the 11th plan 500%. Millions and millions of new schools, lakhs of new schools are going to be built. The building of those schools, the absorption of teachers, that itself can regenerate India. So education can be a massive instrument for social regeneration, for economic transformation in this country, provided we use it to the best advantage. So that is the second pillar of learning, and that is learning to do. Learning to do also involves a positive value system, to which I will come in my third pillar. Now the third pillar is peculiarly important in this day and age of globalization. And the third pillar we identified was learning to live together. Sahana vavatu, sahana bhunaktu, sahviyam karvavahi, tejasvinavadhi tamatsu mavidvishavahi. Let us work together, let us achieve together, let us think together. May there be no hatred between us. Mavidvishavahi. This is a critical point. Because today, if you don't learn to live together and you accept the theory of the clash of civilizations, the world is going to be destroyed. India has always stood for the confluence of civilizations, not the clash of civilizations. And therefore, when we talk of learning to live together, we have got to realize that unless the world becomes pluralistic, multipolar, multi-religious, multilingual, multinational, and unless people live in harmony with each other, they will never be able to achieve a really sane society. And particularly disturbing now is the growth of religious fanaticism, the misuse of religion to preach the cult of violence, which is the antithesis of all we stand for. Our Vedas tell us, Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one. The wise may call it by many names. And yet, today there are ideologies that are preaching violence either in the name of a distorted religion or in the name of some kind of social utopia based upon violence and hatred. Don't underestimate the Naxalite movement, which is now affecting vast areas in India. We are in the crossroads of two types of terrorism. There is an east-west nexus of what we could call jihadi terrorism, and there is a north-south axis of Naxalite terrorism. And India is in the crosshairs of both. And therefore we have to realize that unless we develop the capacity to live together, we are not going to be able to really build the sort of India that we want. And learning to live together involves value orientation. I have identified 5 sets of values. I will not go into them in detail because each one of them can be the basis of a full lecture. I will just mention what I consider to be the 5 sets of values that we have to develop. The first set of family values. That is where our education starts. Not in the college, not in the school, but in the family. And if the family is full of tension and conflict, then the child will also grow up in that situation. So family values again of solidarity, of helpfulness, of respect for elders. We are getting more and more, our population is grey. Elderly people now are finding themselves isolated. And this is not a new phenomenon. Centuries ago, शंकराचार्य एक स्थान लिखते हैं, यावत वित्तोपार्जन सक्तः तावत निज परिवार हो रखतः पश्चात धावति जर्जर देहे वार्ताम पृच्छति कोपि न। कि जब तक धन है तो सब पूछते हैं चाचा जी, नाना जी, दादाजी कैसे हैं, और जब बाद में निर्धन होकर वृद्ध हो जाए तो कोई भी नहीं पूछता। ये शंकराचार्य ने लिखा। So this is not a new problem. This is something we've got to deal with, and the elders also have to be more understanding. I think Indian parents are too possessive, if you ask me. They want to run their children's lives. You cannot run your children's lives. As Khalil Gibran says, your children may come through you, but they don't belong to you. Every individual comes with his own karma, if you like, or genetic configuration, whatever you want to call it. And they must be given freedom. So this balance between the generations is one part of learning of family values. The other is the man-woman, husband-wife relationship. The old tradition of the woman walking 3 paces behind the man is not acceptable, nor is the equally absurd Western tradition of the woman walking 3 paces ahead. The point is really to walk side by side as a Radharani, as a co-sharer in the adventure of living. Then we have societal values: cleanliness, punctuality, teamwork, sahanavavatu, sahanavabhuratu. We must help each other. And for that we've got to fulfill our duties. Everybody talks about fundamental rights. We have distinguished jurists here who spent their lifetime on fundamental rights. I don't want to embarrass you to ask you to raise your hand. With your all distinguished people, you're not students. If you were, I would have done that. How many people in this audience know that there is a chapter on fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution? Duties के बारे में कोई नहीं बोलता, बस देखिए हार्डली 2%, 3% लोगों को पता है। हाँ, ये चाहिए, ठीक है। You're at every liberty to ask for your fundamental rights. Our Constitution gives those fundamental rights. They are justiciable. But what about the fundamental duties? Let me inform you, Part 4A of the Constitution lays down 10 fundamental duties. I was on the drafting committee of these fundamental duties. But nobody pays any attention to the fundamental duties at all. और एक हाथ से ताली नहीं बज सकती. If you really want to build a great India or a great world, you've got to fulfill your social responsibilities. As Vivekananda said when he founded the Ramakrishna Mission, Atmano mokshartham jagat hitaya. अपने मोक्ष के लिए तो सब करते हैं, लेकिन जगत का हित हम भूल गए. That is why India, with its great philosophy and its great background, is still one of the poorest countries in the world. Which is, I think, a great shame and disgrace. So, societal values involves the transmission of socially desirable values. Interfaith values. I mentioned very briefly the growth of fanaticism. Ekam satvipra bahudha vadanti. We need that. I have been in the interfaith movement for the last 30 or 40 years. It's a movement designed to bring together people of different religious persuasions in a harmonious dialogue. Not a shastra to prove which one is superior or not, but at least to begin to understand the other. Otherwise we are stuck in stereotypes and that creates problems. And then there are environmental values. There's that very good, I congratulate the BHU for bringing out a policy on environment and sustainable development, which I'll give to my good friend Jairam Ramesh. He should have got it before he went to Copenhagen. But anyhow, I see that he gets it now. Environmental values, I don't want to go into it. There's a whole world out there. I head an environmental NGO, and what is happening, the way our glaciers are melting, the way our climate is changing, there's a danger of millions of ecological refugees within our very lifetimes. It's a really very serious problem. And my submission is that whatever America may do or the developed countries may or may not do, we in our own interest must do whatever we can. We shouldn't just leave it कि भाई आपने किया है आप उसको ठीक कीजिए, बट हम बह रहे हैं उसके बीच में, वो पता नहीं कब करेंगे. हमने माना कि तगाफुल न करोगे लेकिन खाक हो जाएंगे हम तुमको खबर होने तक. By the time they do their we will have been reduced to dust or reduced to water rather. Therefore, environmental values are extremely important if you're going to talk of a global society. And then values for a global society itself. We must learn that we are part of a global system. There are 200 countries in the world. We are proud to be Indian. We think India is great. But there are 199 other countries who also think their countries are great. So unless we now move from Bhavani Bharati to Bhavani Vasundhara, from Mother India to Mother Earth, after all, the earth is the mother that has nurtured us. That glorious photograph of Earth taken from outer space, the NASA photograph, that shows our planet as it really is. A tiny speck of light and life against the unending vastnesses of outer space. So beautiful and yet so fragile. And look at the way we are exploiting it. Go back to the Atharva Veda, the 63 shlokas of the Bhumi Suktam are the most comprehensive and integrated statement of environmental values that you can find. It is in our tradition. So when you talk of the Indian vision, we must reinterpret the Indian vision in terms of today's problems. On each one of the problems, whether it is interfaith conflict, whether it is environmental problems, whether it is the whole question of education, we have in the Indian vision great wisdom, provided we are able to understand it and reflect it. Then the fourth pillar of learning. The first pillar is learning to know, second is learning to do, third is learning to live together, and the fourth is learning to be. Learning to be, just think about it. What are the implications of that? People skim over life. I know so many people skimming over life without once diving deeper into the depths of their own consciousness. It is within our consciousness, within ourselves, that the depths of reality actually lie. And when we say learning to be, that means we've got to develop our spiritual capacities, our inner capacities to the utmost. Allama Iqbal has a marvelous share. खुद ही को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या. That is learning to be, that is developing, that is yoga, that is joining the outer and the inner, that is finding the light within, what the Christians call the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world, what the Sufis call the Nur-e-Rohani, what the Sikhs call, Gurus call the Ek Onkar, what our Vedanta calls Hiranmaya Pare Koshe Viridam Brahma Nishkalam Tat Subram Jyotisham Jyoti Satadatma Vido. In the furthest golden sheet resides the immutable Brahman. That is what the knowers of the Atman know. We have to look within ourselves. We have to realize that life is not a meaningless journey from the womb to the tomb. It is a unique opportunity for spiritual growth. And this inner quest is in every way as significant as our outer life. And therefore, friends, and how we do it is a different matter. You do it through meditation, you do it through yoga, you do it through bhakti, jnana yoga, raja yoga, whichever way you like. But do it and learn to be. If we can understand these four pillars of learning, taken together, learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to be, represent an alternative, holistic philosophy of higher education that I think can meet the requirements of the rapidly changing global society. And that is where universities have to be in the forefront of this change. As rightly was said by one of the previous speakers, a university is not merely a degree-giving organization, it is a knowledge-creating organization, it is a value-transmitting organization. It is a group where people revolve around a certain idea, ideal. And the BHU, Banaras Hindu University, with the great vision of Mahamana Madan Mohan Malviya still inspiring us, I think this is a place where we can spearhead this new consciousness. So I will say, friends, that all of us connected with education have a grave responsibility for nurturing future generations, for nurturing the new India, for nurturing planet Earth. That is going to be our contribution towards building a sane and harmonious global society. It is a difficult path. There are no shortcuts left now for greatness, either individual or collective. But it is across that dangerous and difficult path that we have to go. As the Upanishad exhorts us, the Kathopanishad, to awake, arise, and walk across that razor-edged path to our goals. And what are our goals? A new India, a new society, a new world, a new kind of consciousness on planet Earth. And that is the phrase with which I would like to leave you. While warmly congratulating all of you, welcoming all of you, I'd like to leave you with that great exhortation from the Kathopanishad. Uttishtata jagrata prapya varan nibodhata kshurasya dhara nishida durattaya durgam pathastat kavayo vada.